So I've entitled the theme of this series, Anchored in Truth, Finding Peace in Turbulent Times. Anchored in Truth, Finding Peace in Turbulent Times. I want in this series to work through three very broad ideas, the ideas of recognizing and releasing the fears and uncertainty that we may be experiencing, reclaiming our inner power through spiritual practice and teaching, and anchoring ourselves in the divinity within us and recognizing that divinity within each other as well. I deeply believe that these are times that are going to test us. They are already testing us, and that these are times that our spiritual teachings and practices ought to better equip us to be able to be people of love, to be people of kindness, to stand for principle, to stand for truth, to trust the Spirit of God within each other. This week, I want to focus on the idea of uncertainty and fear, and how do we deal with that? How do we deal with the feelings of fear that may arise, either because of things happening in the world right now, or things that we're just dealing with personally? You know, as a minister, people confide in me, and I hear usually the times when people are struggling the most. It may be times when their families are falling apart. It may be times that they're facing divorce or going through a legal battle, or times when they are struggling financially or dealing with a significant health challenge or some other life crisis. And what I know is that as difficult as life can be, that there are things we can do to make our way through a little bit easier. And that as we do what we can do to deal with our lives more effectively, grounded and anchored in spiritual principle and truth, that also is an inspiration, can serve as an inspiration to others. When we see and hear of others managing through difficulty, it sparks something in us, I think, a remembrance that we too can do that. And so we have the ability to lift each other up. We are dealing with a lot today. Would you not agree? We're dealing with an awful lot today. No matter where we may be on a political spectrum, we're dealing with an awful lot today. We're dealing with polarization that I've never seen before to this extent, and a very nasty way and a very uncivil way of dealing with very different opinions. That breaks my heart. I think it's good to have different opinions and different viewpoints, but I want to do my very best to be civil about it and to be decent about it and to be reasonable about it and to be willing to understand how and why somebody else may see things so very differently than I do. So we're dealing with a lot of polarization in our country today. We're certainly dealing with economic uncertainty, ups and downs. If you have any sorts of investments in the stock market or a 401k, you're probably, if you're watching it, it's going up and it's going down and it's going up. And it's uncertain, right? Very, very uncertain. We're dealing with big social issues and changes. There are certain rights that we fought so hard to have as citizens that seem to be being stripped away today. Big, big changes. And then we have what's going on in the world globally. We hear constant conversation, if we're paying attention at all, to the news of the wars around the world. It seems to be never ending. Would you not agree? And so what do? As individual people, we can't solve it, but we can certainly do our little part of it. And I think our little part of it begins and remains in this idea of being anchored in spiritual truth and finding our path forward during these uncertain and turbulent times. There's a scripture verse that I call upon when I'm feeling unsettled, and it is the simple scripture verse, "Be still and know that I am God." Be still. Just those words. Just be still. Say that with me. Be still. Be still and know that I am God. I also call upon words that I once thought were in the Bible, but they're actually not in the Bible. The words, this too shall pass. Oh, is that an important concept and teaching? It's believed to have been first uttered or taught in among the Sufis. This too shall pass. There's a legend called Solomon's Seal, a legend where Solomon wanted one short statement, small enough that it could be engraved on the inside of a ring, one short statement that could always be true. And he was given this statement, this too shall pass. Would you not agree that that statement is always true, no matter what the this is? This too shall pass. So I want to share some reminders with us. And I very purposely use the word reminder because most of us have either lived enough life to have learned most of these things, or we've been in this spiritual path of consciousness long enough that we've heard these things, we've studied them. But I don't know if it's true for you. I know it's true for me, that even though I have learned things, I need to remind myself of them. Is that true for you too? I need to remind myself of them. And the very same reminders can mean something different to me today than they meant to me last year. And the reason for that is, hopefully, I'm a different person living in a slightly different set of circumstances this year than I was last year. So there's always the opportunity even when we know something, to hear it with new ears, to see it with new eyes, and to own it again in a deeper way that can fundamentally help us to be better people. So the first is the simple reminder, it's okay to feel afraid. Whether we're talking about any of the things I mentioned before on a more national and global level, or we're talking about personal things, it's okay to be afraid. Fear is a normal feeling. We kind of need it. It kind of keeps us on our toes. It can protect us. So it's okay to be afraid. Most of us in Unity have done an awful lot of personal growth. And some of that personal growth has been around dealing with fears that are closer to home, the kind of normal sorts of fears that we might feel, and to learn how to overcome them. But right now, it may seem that the kinds of fears that we're experiencing are more existential in nature, bigger in nature than just the personal ones that are closer to home. And yet, regardless, it's important to remind ourselves that it's okay to feel afraid. It's a normal human response when things are difficult, when things are scary, when things are uncertain, when we don't know our way. And being willing to at least admit it to ourselves is an important and helpful way of dealing with it. The second is that fear often stems from the unknown and a perceived lack of control. The things we are afraid of often stem from the unknown and or a perceived lack of control. Think about the unknown. Think about when you don't know how to do something, you can often feel afraid of that something. When you've never tried something before, it's brand new, there may be that feeling of fear. I've never done that before, fill in the blank, whatever it is. I feel butterflies, I feel a little bit nervousness, I feel awkward, I feel uncomfortable because it's unfamiliar. It's unfamiliar. So fear often stems from the very fact that we're stepping into uncharted territory, right? It's new, it's different for us. We haven't been there before. Fear also stems from that feeling of lack of control. And that may be up for us more right now than usual. The lack of control. Can you control the stock market? No, I can't either. Can you control what's going on globally? You're very quiet this morning. You can't, and I can't either. I can't predict what's going to go on halfway around. I can hardly predict what's going to go on in my own life, let alone halfway around the world, right? So when we feel like we can't control something, we can feel afraid. Just reminding ourselves that these are, for many of us, very common triggers to feeling afraid can help us normalize that feeling so that it doesn't paralyze us. If we can normalize it, it is less likely to paralyze us. What's that expression, frozen with fear? We don't act very responsibly or very intelligently when we're frozen. When we are dealing with difficult, complicated situations in our lives personally or collectively, we don't want to be paralyzed. We need to be mobilized. And one of the ways that I think we do that is the way we look at the things that we are afraid of, the way that we don't hide it, we don't ignore it, we don't make it bigger than it is, but we look at it squarely. We normalize it. We say, it's normal for me to feel afraid given the situation that's transpiring in my life or in the world around me, but I don't have to be paralyzed by it because there is something in me that is greater than it. To me, that's what faith is. Either we really believe our basic teachings in our spiritual tradition of unity, or we don't. If we really believe them, if we really believe that there is a presence and a power, you can call it God, you can call it something else, but that there is a presence and power that is innately good, if we truly believe that, and that's our foundational principle in unity, then we absolutely can know that there is something more in us that is capable and strong enough to figure a way to deal with whatever's before us. That deserves an amen. Amen. It doesn't mean we always automatically remember it. And that's why, excuse me, sometimes I think we need to be together, or we need to be with people we say might be of our own tribe, where we can talk kind of the same language, so we buoy each other up, so we remember and can be anchored in truth and find that peace in turbulent times. Another piece that is important and can be very helpful in being anchored in truth, in finding the peace, is being able to identify the specific fears and uncertainties we're facing. To identify the specific fears and uncertainties that we're facing. Most fear can really be boiled down to two things. Most fear can really be boiled down to two things. The fear of losing what we have, or the fear of not getting what we want. Just hold that for a moment and kind of run that through your own mind and kind of ask yourself, does that seem to be true for you? I think it is a very true statement that most fear can be boiled down to either we're afraid of losing what we have, we're afraid of losing our money, our relationships, our way of living, our freedoms, our liberties, our way of understanding the world, our relationships. Fear of losing what we have, or the fear of not getting what we want. The reason it can be helpful to identify our specific fears is because then we're better equipped to face them and to deal with them. So looking at the nuanced level of what it is that we're afraid of is a valuable exercise. Are you afraid of not being enough? That's a big fear that many people have, a very personal fear of not being enough, not measuring up, not being understood, not being heard, not being loved, not being accepted. Are you afraid of not having enough? Are you afraid of losing the ground that you've covered? Are you afraid of losing a certain style of living? To be able to get at more of the nuanced level for yourself is important. So it's more than just being able to say, yes, I'm afraid of losing what I have or not getting what I want, but what's behind that for you? What's behind that for you? Sometimes I think in metaphysics, we tend to stay too much at the surface level of things. We say very simplistic statements like cause and effect, and you think it and you attract it. Well, yes, that's true at a certain level, but there's the nuanced layers of it. We also sometimes have a tendency in metaphysics to not want to go deep enough into the issues of what are going on in our lives because we think that's giving power to it. I don't agree with that. I think we have to look at what's going on in our lives. We have to have the courage and the wisdom and the discipline and the discernment to look and see what's happening in our lives, to look and see and understand what it is we are afraid of. But then we don't dwell there. We don't get on a pity party on it. We name it, we recognize it, we call it, so that we then can deal with it better. But if we are afraid or unwilling to even look at what we might call the dark side or the shadow side or what's not working in our lives, then how in the world are we ever going to really be able to fix it? How are we ever going to be able to really heal from it or correct it? And so it's helpful to know what it is that we're afraid of. Why? I think there are 3 general reasons why. Number 1, we gain clarity and control. We gain clarity and control when we know what it is that we are afraid of. When you pinpoint the exact nature of your fear, it transforms from a vague, overwhelming feeling into something more concrete. Knowing your fear gives you a sense of control. Instead of being at the mercy of an undefined anxiety, you can take specific steps to manage it, right? You can take specific steps to manage it. So you gain clarity and control. Secondly, you can target solutions. If I know that I'm afraid of public speaking, what could I do? I could practice. I could do what? I could sign up for Toastmasters. I could take a speech class. If I was afraid of finances, what could I do? I could take a class. I could create a budget. So when I can target what it is, when I know what it is I fear, then I can target a solution to it. If I'm afraid I'm going to lose my partner, I could go into counseling, right? When I know what it is I'm afraid of, when I have the courage to name it, then I can spend some energy not denying it, but figuring out what can I learn or do, what can I take hold of or release to help me get past that fear, to help me bring the positive into my life experience. Does that make sense? So it's helpful to know what you fear because you gain clarity and control. You can target specific solutions. And the third is you lessen its power. You lessen its power. When you can get out, if you're feeling really anxious now because of what's going on in your personal life, or you look out at the world and you're feeling really anxious about it, if you can pinpoint what it is that's beneath that anxiety and be as specific as possible, it helps to lessen the power of it over you because you are bringing it into the light of understanding. Why is it that kids often don't want to sleep without a light on? Why do they don't like the dark? Because they think the boogeyman's in the dark, right? There's something scary in the dark. Well, I think there's a lingering aspect of that for us even in adulthood, that The things that we push back and away and won't take a look at because we think, well, I don't want to admit that about myself, wind up being bigger and feeling worse than if we go, okay, I'm going to take a deep breath in. I'm going to try to look at this. I'm going to try to understand what this is and bring it out into the light of day. It becomes much less scary. Does that make sense? Okay. Anchored in truth, finding peace in turbulent times. Say that with me. Anchored in truth, finding peace in turbulent times. One of the things that we can do is the practice of witnessing. If you've done some study of Eastern traditions, you know the idea of witnessing is a powerful practice. It's the practice of being able to observe impartially whatever it is that you are feeling and whatever is going on. That sounds really simple, doesn't it? To observe impartially. But it's not all that simple, because to observe something impartially means you don't have any judgment. You don't put a judgment on it. You don't put a label on it. You don't call it good. You don't call it bad. You just observe it impartially. You accept it. It doesn't mean you have to like it. You probably don't. If you're having to witness and practice, you're doing that probably because the very thing you're witnessing or practicing is not something you want. Nod your head if you know exactly what I'm talking about there, right? It's not the thing you want. And yet the practice is a very sound spiritual practice to help us be able to deal more effectively with whatever it is that is going on, to be able to observe it impartially, to simply notice the feeling, to notice the intensity or notice any physical sensations around it without trying to change it or suppress it. Non-attachment, to neither grab it nor to push it away, to let it be, and to let it be without any layers of judgment, any layers of label. Because as soon as we can be in the state of witnessing it, we relieve ourselves of the resistance, we relieve ourselves of a great portion of the fear, if not all of the fear, and we empower ourselves to access much greater clarity and much sharper wisdom, so that whatever it is that's going on, we can move through more effectively. I want to close with just two simple things here. Simple to say, not always simple to do. It is the idea of that teaching in the Tao that I read to you earlier. The idea of, do you have the patience to wait until your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving until the right action arises by itself? The patience to wait until the mud settles. It's not literally talking about mud. It's using that as a powerful visual. Do you have the patience to let the uncertainty, whatever the fears are, whatever the doubts are, whatever the negative self-talk is, do you have the patience to let that just quiet down and settle, so that then what remains is the spaciousness of clarity? And out of that spaciousness of clarity comes whatever right answer or right next step is yours to take. It's unlikely that anybody else is going to tell you what that is for you. I have every confidence that there is that within you that can tell you what that is for you. But it's a matter of letting that craziness, that mental chatter, those fears, you're not denying them, but you're just letting them settle so that the clarity can arise and that you can see what is your next right step, your next right course of action. Namaste.